We are on.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. We're so glad to have you here. We're here for a very powerful discussion in recognition of Child Abuse Prevention Month, featuring two Washington women who have transformed personal tragedy into a mission for change. Please welcome Tracy Jefferson and Ashley Barnes. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we're going to hear about their stories very shortly. Before we begin tonight, I want to thank always Nikki and Haley and Raul's here moderating, and Jim, I'm sure he's somewhere in the background too, for being with us.
Yeah.
Um, I want to take a minute to share why Child Abuse Prevention Month holds such a deep meaning for all of us at Light the Way and Gabby Petito Foundation too, as we join together on this partnership. When we first entered this space back at the end of 2021, we were advocating for the missing. And the first case that we started really advocating for was the heartbreaking story of a little girl named Oakley Carlson. Oakley was a bright, beautiful 5-year-old little girl from Oakville, Washington. And for most of her young life, she was raised in a safe and loving foster home. But despite serious concerns about drug abuse and child abuse and domestic violence, Oakley was abruptly returned to her biological parents. Not long after that decision, during a welfare check by law enforcement, Oakley was discovered to be missing. She has not been seen since February 10th, 2021. And as we've followed Oakley's case and learned more, we've come to understand how just devastatingly she's been failed. Failed by the system that was meant to protect her, the Washington State Department of Children, Youth, and Families. They missed critical warning signs. Oakley's foster parents, Jamie Jo and Eric Hiles, who we call her true mama and daddy, continue to fight for her every day, and they call for reform in Washington State. Their strength and dedication have been an inspiration to all of us, and at Light the Way, we believe Oakley's story cannot be ignored. That's why we've started a petition now with over 8,000 signatures asking Governor Bob Ferguson to authorize an independent outside investigation into how Oakley's story was handled by Washington DCYF. We believe in accountability. We believe in justice, and most of all, we believe in protecting children like Oakley. I invite all of you tonight to join us in this effort, either while you're listening or after the webinar. We'd ask you to take a moment to sign and share this petition. It's www.change.org/justice for Oakley. Together, we can be a voice for Oakley and for every child who deserves to be safe, seen, and protected. And I feel so lucky that Oakley's story was the first story that came across my computer screen and, made me want to do more because it brought me wonderful people like Ashley and Tracy into my lives who have these incredible stories who are impacting change in Washington State. And that has been such an honor to be able to meet families like theirs who are doing wonderful things for children in Washington. So before we dive in, I just want to go over a few quick housekeeping things. We'll have a short Q&A at the end. Raul's in the chat moderating, so if you have any questions, make sure to put that in and Raul will get to you. And then the recording will be available later on the Gabby Petito Foundation YouTube page. So if you miss anything, you can go back and watch it. And also feel free to share it on your social media as well. So let's just start with a little quick introductions from our team. So I am Shayna. I am the founder of Light the Way, and I'm really excited for this evening. And Nicole, why don't you jump in?
Well, hi, I'm Nicole Schmidt. I am the president of Gabby Petito Foundation, Gabby Petito's mom, and we recently partnered with Light the Way and are very, very excited about this partnership. I love working with Shayna, and I'm so honored to be invited to these amazing webinars and meet amazing families that she's been working with, and really happy to be here tonight. So thank you for inviting me to be part of the conversation. Haley.
So sorry, I muted to sneeze and then look what happened.
It's all good.
Um, yeah, so I'm Haley Gray. I'm a researcher and writer for multiple podcasts, and I am also the media specialist for Light the Way. And I'm so thankful to be in this space and be able to have these important conversations. And I know I'm going to learn a lot from Ashley and Tracy. And I just thank you both for being so open about your experiences. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. So now I'd like to turn to our guests of honor. So I want to introduce Tracy Jefferson, and before I let her kind of take it away, I want to just give my little kind of backstory about how Tracy and I met. So I was speaking a lot at the DCYF Oversight Board committee meetings, and I met a really fantastic foster parent in Washington named Shannon Anderson. And she's incredible. She's just a wealth of knowledge. She's been awarded an award for being a foster care parent in Washington. And she also has such a heart to make changes so that kids are safe. And Shannon was like, "You need to meet my friend Tracy because she is doing some really wonderful things and she has a mission to change what's going on in Washington." And that's kind of how we connected. And since I've met Tracy, she has had such amazing ideas in changing the way that the laws are written in Washington. And she's done it in a very brave way because for a while there were foster parents were worried about speaking out. And Tracy really stepped up and decided that she was going to be one of the first ones to speak up. So I'm really honored to be able to introduce Tracy tonight and have her tell you about her organization. So Tracy, can you just give us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much for that incredible introduction, Shayna. I don't know what to say to that other than thank you. Um, yeah, I've been a foster parent here in Washington State for about 8 years now. My husband and I joke that we've been married 8 years, 3 houses, 8 kids, 3 dogs, and a partridge in a pear tree. And I can't I've never been one that's been able to sit on the sidelines when I see something happening. It's been in my nature my entire life. And so when we saw what was happening in foster care, we got on this path, and I'll tell you guys more about that later, but really looking forward to tonight's conversation.
Thank you so much. And then I just want to tell you a little bit about Ashley Barnes. Ashley Barnes is someone that I feel like I was meant to meet on this journey of becoming an advocate. So when I started working on Oakley's case, I, joined her Facebook group and I was posting a lot of advocacy stuff in there. And one day this woman posted, it was Ashley, about her niece and how her niece had been failed by Washington State. And so we call Hazel Journey, and she goes by her first and her middle name. But her legal name was Hazel Homan. And I Googled Hazel Homan and I realized that there was this baby that had been tragically murdered in Washington State not far long before Oakley. And I started to read about how DCYF was aware of some of these things. And then I sent Ashley a message, and Ashley was a bit timid at first, which is so funny to think about now because she is not a timid girl. And and it was because they were actually in trial at the time. For the woman that was found guilty of murdering Hazel. And from there, I learned about what an incredible person Ashley is and how she truly took the tragedy that she was going through and she turned it into a mission to save other people's lives and really to save her own life, to make herself get through what what had been such a hard, difficult, tragic thing. And since then, I've watched Ashley grow in ways that I never thought were imaginable because she has just taken it and gone. And I'm just so, so proud of her in so many ways. I've seen her graduate from college, and I've seen her step up and speak in front of legislators and go to meetings. And when I first met her, she was told me that she was afraid to do all those things. So I am so, so honored to introduce her. So Ashley, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you for that introduction. You were so incredible. And, I just want to thank all of you for this opportunity, and for reaching out and inviting me onto your platform. My name is Ashley Barnes. I am an advocate for children here and in Washington. And I also do therapy with children. I've done a number of things. I was a family preservation provider for a while. And now I am doing school-based therapy with children. Like Shanna said, I have been trying since Hazel got justice in 2022. I really began to be the voice for Hazel. And not just for Hazel, for other children within the system, because Hazel's not the only one. And that's me. Thank you.
So we'll go back to Tracy because we want to hear a little bit more. Can you please tell us about your journey becoming an advocate for children?
Yeah, so when I became a foster parent, we were looking to be that safe place for kids and stand in that gap while families healed. And if it led to us being a forever home for siblings, that was really where our heart was also at. So our first kids came to us. We went from, newlyweds to a family of 5 or 6, actually, because my stepson overnight. And it was incredible to watch them grow, to get them the help they needed to recover. And we were on a path towards guardianship for these kiddos. And then all of a sudden the plan changed. And it got me asking why. And it got me diving in deeper. And the deeper I dove and the more questions I asked, the more I started hearing about how this wasn't an uncommon practice in Washington state, and how the perception of safety was different, how the threshold for safety was different than what I ever thought was imaginable as a parent, as a healthcare provider, as just a regular person. I never imagined that the threshold for safety would be, do we think that they're going to die in the next 24 hours? Do we think that something bad is going to happen in the next 30 days? And the more, like I said, the more questions I asked, the harder it got to ignore it. I actually had a official tell me that my perception of safety was because I came from a place of privilege. And I couldn't let that go because they knew nothing about my background. And my mom did an incredible job raising us. My dad did an incredible job being involved in our lives. We overcame some hard stuff. But regardless of where we came from in our backgrounds, children's safety doesn't change. It doesn't matter what background we came from. It doesn't matter what our heritage is. It doesn't matter what ethnicity we are. Keeping kids safe is across party lines. It's across ethnicities. It's global. And so I couldn't believe that was the mindset that was being shared with me. So then started connecting with other foster parents, such as our co-founders like Shannon and Tristan, and the conversation started growing. Then this little House Bill 1227 came into play, and it's also known as the Keeping Families Together Act. And they started offering training to us as foster parents about what this would mean and how it would change things. And what it did was it changed the threshold for removing a child to having to prove that there's imminent physical harm going to happen to the child. So it excludes things like chronic neglect. You have to draw a correlation between drug use and imminent physical harm. And a small group of us started chatting in a Facebook Messenger, and we'd connected on one of our foster parent pages. And we said, gosh, this can't be good. What do they think is going to happen? But there was nothing we could do to change it at that point because it hadn't fully been enacted. We weren't sure what we were doing, and we were just scared. We thought, well, we'll track it close. And then exactly what we thought would happen started happening. And the first case that really came to light for us in the public domain was Otis Sorensen. And Otis was 5 or 6 weeks old when he died. He had been sent home to parents using substances on a safety plan, had a caregiver there ready to help, but he was found under a bush, deceased, with his father. So people started asking, well, what do we do now? And I was angry. I couldn't believe that this was playing out exactly how we thought it would. And I said, well, we march. And so we had our first rally at the Capitol with about 10 of us, maybe 15, if I'm being generous. It was cold, it was wet, it was rainy. We didn't know what to do with signs, but we got out there and we took a stand. And then that started growing. And before I knew it, we had more people reaching out to us saying, well, this happened to a kid that was in my care, or this happened to my family member. And then just this over the course of that, I ended up meeting Shayna from Light the Way through Shannon. We started talking more. They had a rally where they lined the walkway with the shoes to represent the kids' lives that had been lost. We started connecting with more legislators. And then just this last February, we had a little bit over 100 people join us to again protest and say imminent physical harm is imminent trauma. And we have to do better for the kids in our state if we're going to break these cycles of mental health issues, substance abuse. And we have to break the cycle if we're going to prevent child abuse and neglect. And that grew into where we just got registered as a nonprofit organization because we know that this isn't going to stop at the footsteps of the Capitol, that this is going to be a marathon and not a sprint. And we want people to know that we're serious about this, that we're not backing down.
That's amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And the stuff that goes on in Washington Washington State is just truly mind-boggling. Just taking kids away from safe homes and then putting them back with their parents for what, I don't understand. But so we thank you for sharing that, and thank you for all that you do for children and families. Ashley, we'd like to turn to you and have you talk about what led you to become an advocate for children. I know it's like a super short, simple story. It'll just take you maybe like 30 seconds.
I got my timer. First, I want to say, Tracy, I joined that protest. Actually, Shannon Anderson asked me to join that protest in February. That was the first time I had ever met you. I did not know your story. So this was my first time getting to experience and hear your story. And I think that it's incredible what you're doing. And you're right. We have to fight. We can't give up. We have to be the voice for these children. And we're not going to give up. We're not going to stop. And we're just going to grow. So.
Okay. Thank you, Ashley.
Yeah. So first, I'll start from the beginning. Hazel was taken from my brother and her biological mother in 2017 due to domestic violence situation where my brother held them in an apartment for almost 6 hours. After that, she was taken to CPS. CPS contacted my mother and my stepfather and said, hey, Hazel's here. You guys can come get her. This is what happened. Da, 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 da. So I was on my way to work. I found out about that. I linked up with them and we all drove up to Bellingham. They told us that Hazel was going to be a ward of the state. but that she could go and stay with my mother and my stepdad. So she resided with them for almost 2 years. She was a light. Everywhere that girl went, she just was full of smiles. She had empathy at such a young age. Um, she was just so innocent and so pure. And when she lived with my mom, we lived very close. So my family, I have 2 girls, and I have my husband. We have a lot of family that was actually involved, and we loved Hazel, and she was taken care of here. And my mom did great. My stepdad, they did wonderful. We were all involved, like holidays, everything. Like, we were always involved. I would take her out for just Auntie and Hazel dates. Like, I just loved it. So then after that, my brother, the biological mother, moved away to Iowa. She's seen her maybe a handful of times. CPS helped her to do that. Then she moved away to Iowa and didn't have any contact. My brother, on the other hand, he ended up not really having contact very much, but then he got involved, and CPS kind of forced him to do visitation with her. He was missing visits like crazy. He ended up getting with this woman who is the monster that killed my niece. And then it was like he had to prove to her that he wanted to have Hazel in his life. So he started coming to visitations, but he was supposed to be doing domestic violence classes. He was supposed to be doing drug and alcohol. He was supposed to get signed up for mental health. And he had done one DV class, and he hadn't been complying, like, at all. And all of a sudden they're like, okay, we're gonna stop the visitation and we're gonna do this instead. And so they had my parents drive them up to stay the night and leave her there, and then go back up and get her. They did that for, I'd say, maybe at the most a month, and then it was reunification. When they reunified her, it seemed like everything was good at first. My brother had a job. He was, doing what he needed to do, other than what CPS needed him to do. But he was actually doing pretty good at first. And then more and more, they just kind of lost contact with us. I would be calling and begging to be able to talk to Hazel, and they'd be like, oh, she's busy, or oh, she's sick, or oh, she's napping. And I was like, that's weird. How is that possible? Like, every single time. And then there was an incident that happened in August where my daughter actually found bruises on Hazel, but it had looked like maybe like a finger mark on her shoulder and one on her back. And my 14-year-old daughter confronted my brother. And my brother said that she had fallen on the rocks at the beach. And that just didn't sit right with me. My brother was very controlling, and we had to walk on eggshells when he had Hazel, or else, again, he would cut all contact. We would not be able to see her, talk to her, anything. But I never imagined that my brother would hurt my niece or let somebody else hurt my niece. After that situation, like I said, we lost all contact. They ended up getting a hold of me in October, and they wanted to come down and talk with our family. And then they wanted Hazel to be able to come down after that and stay for a couple weeks. So we played his game, and we're like, okay, whatever, come down here. They didn't come. I tried to get a hold of them on Halloween. Nothing. Tried to get them to come down for the week before, actually, Thanksgiving. Nothing. Wouldn't even talk to me. Then we got the call on November 27th that Hazel was in the hospital. And what we had been told is that she had fallen down the stairs. but she was critical. And that she was being life flighted to Harborview. That was a call I never thought I would ever get. And so we got there, and I got to go in there and I got to see Hazel, and she was laying there lifeless in the bed. And at the hospital, it was really hard because I just knew that something wasn't right. The story they were telling wasn't right. My brother was there. The monster that did this to Hazel was there. And then a couple days later, they had questioned her son. And so she was not able to be there. But my brother still had stayed there. I was his punching bag in that hospital. He did everything he possibly could to try to get me to get angry enough and get me kicked out. But it didn't work. I knew Hazel needed me. God knew Hazel needed me. And I just let him do whatever he was going to do. And, you know, just pretty much prayed my way through it. And then the 30th came. It was the morning of the 30th. And me and my Aunt Tara and my sister, we were in the room. And the doctor comes in and he's like, we've had no brain activity. So we're going to do this last and final test. And we were like, okay. So he goes to start the test, and they take because she had to have, you know, the ventilator, everything on, they take that out. They're like, okay, we're going to see if she has any movement, if there's anything there. And we're like, okay. I dropped so hard on my knees and I started to pray. Just let her breathe. Like, just let her take one breath. Let her breathe. And all I kept hearing was no response. No response. And that still to this day rings in my ears like it was yesterday. And then he's like, you know, there's no response. She has no brain activity. She's gone. And at that point, my brother had left. He was more worried about his girlfriend than he did about his own biological daughter. And he left. He was gone. He wasn't even there for that day. We ended up getting a hold of him and telling him that she was gone, that there was no way that she was coming back. And I was so freaking mad. I was so mad at God. I didn't understand how he could save other people, but he couldn't save this poor innocent child. Like, look at that face. Like, who would want to hurt her? And so the next day, we were sitting there, and a lady that was from Life Center Northwest, it's an organ donation place, she came in, and she's talking over about organ donation. I didn't even, that wasn't even on my mind. I didn't even know really about organ donation until this time. And I was like, okay, well, what is this? So she starts talking to us, and my brother was the one that, because he had pretty much temporary custody of her from being reunified. So he had to be there. He had to be the one to say that they would do organ donation. So he came, and one of my aunts and him went in to talk to the lady, and they came out, and they did decide to do organ donation. So the first miracle that Hazel, even though she was bruised and she had broken bones, she had over 50 injuries that were healing in different stages of healing. She had a second-degree burn to her hand that they never took her to the doctor for, that CPS never did any kind of investigation. They should have took her out of the house. After that, she had a chemical burn to her eye not even a week and a half later, where she did have to go to the hospital. And CPS didn't take her out of the house then. And because of their confidentiality, we didn't even know until all of this all came out. And so we did end up donating 3 of Hazel's organs. We donated her heart to a little boy who has a twin. And we got an actual letter from them thanking us. We donated her liver to a little girl. We donated her kidneys to a young man. And after that, like, my whole life flipped upside down. I did not understand how somebody could do this. And I did not understand how she could be failed so bad from DCYF. I went crazy. I started researching. I have a binder full of my research stuff and children that have been failed by CPS, all of it. I was going for nursing for school. I didn't feel like I was supposed to do that anymore. I switched and I started going for my bachelor's in social work so that I could work from the inside out and figure out what needed to be changed so I could bring it to these legislators. After that, then I graduated in December of 2023. And I did start a case against DCYF in the state of Washington, a wrongful death lawsuit. In 2024, September, this will be the first time I am telling Hazel's whole entire story. In 2024, that lawsuit was settled. And we were able to donate to Life Center Northwest in honor of Hazel. They also have done, yes, this was an event that they did this year around Christmas time at the Seattle of Lights, where they honored her and her story. We were able to donate to Seattle Children's Hospital for their uncompensated care and their bereavement services, which is actually called the Journey Program. And this is at Seattle Children's Hospital up on the wall. She has 2 big displays of her and her story to honor her. And we also were able to donate to an organization, an amazing organization called Olive Crest. They do child prevention, and they help a lot of foster families and children. This is the plaque that is on the wall there for their child enrichment. And it says, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." And in the beginning, I had said, God is going to do something good out of this. Hazel's death is not going to be in vain. He promised me. I remember I was in the shower and he came to me and I was crying and I'm like, how is anything going to be in honor of Hazel? How is anything good going to come out of this? Like, I was at my lowest. I just didn't even want to be here anymore. I didn't want to get out of bed. And he told me something good is going to come out of this. He said, it's all in my perfect timing. All in my perfect timing. All I need you to do is follow me. And from that point on, I walked by faith. I had no idea where I was going. I had no idea what my plan was going to be, what his plan was going to be. But I walked by faith. And through all of that, Hazel is saving many lives. With all the money that we were able to donate to those 3 organizations, Hazel is saving more lives than just those 3 that she started out with. She's a miracle for families. She's a second chance. She's a heart that gets to beat. And I have to give, I have that right here in my hand. This is my heart that I got when we did the organ donation. They gave us all hearts in my family, and we got to put her fingerprint on the back of it. And, this has led me into what I feel is my calling and my purpose. This has led me into advocating for children. This has led me into advocating against child abuse. This has led me into my career that I never even thought of doing. I wanted to be a nurse. I didn't want to go into social work. I have done the family preservation services. I've worked with the foster families. I've worked with the families that were involved in CPS. I've seen them give people lock boxes to put their drugs into. I've had to unlock a lockbox for somebody to put their drugs into. I've seen the caseloads that these social workers have, and it's just insane. Like, I'm furious with DCYF, and even though I'm a social worker, I would not work for DCYF, but I have been on the inside. I've done visit supervision, and it just gave me this fire inside of me that will not burn out. And just like Tracy, I will continue to fight. And I mean, we get rejected a lot, don't we, Tracy? Yeah, we get rejected a lot. But, you know, we just have that fighting spirit, just like all of you do. All of you. You guys have all have your own stories and amazing things that you guys have went through. And, you know, you could have gave up. You could have gave up, but you didn't. You're here and you're fighting. And you have this amazing platform, Nikki. And I'm so sorry for your loss, you know. But, you know, one thing about this journey is it has introduced me and got me connected with some amazing, inspiring people who have just as much passion and compassion and fight in them to keep going and fight for these children and fight for these missing children and missing people, period. Like, yes. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Wow. Ashley, thank you for all of that. I feel it very, very deeply. So, why don't you take a breath? Let's all take a breath. That was a lot, but I know why you're doing what you're doing, and I thank you for that, because you are saving lives. Hazel's saving lives. She is such a beautiful little girl. Why don't you take a break, and I will move over to Tracy for a minute so you can take a breath. And you kind of touched on this already, Ashley, but let's talk about the current state of foster care and what are the biggest issues that, you know, you see in the child welfare system today?
The biggest issues I see in the child welfare system today is that there's too many families out there like Ashley's that lost. Every single family that I've talked to says they had such a light. They brought so much joy. They were taken too early. They were here for a purpose, right? These are not just statistics on some legislator's dashboard. These are not just a social services experiment. These are people's children. These are people's nieces, nephews, grandchildren. These are kids who never got to experience their first day of school, who never got to fall in love, who never got to graduate, who never got to get into trouble, who never got to see like what the world had in store for them. And that was taken from them, and it was taken from their families. And it took from the world potential future leaders, potential future nurses, doctors, social workers, scientists, world changers. And I'm not okay with it. We fail, not just in Washington state, but now we're getting stories from all across the country. We fail to put the best interest of the children at the forefront of the decisions we make. And that is the biggest failure we are seeing today. When we don't take into consideration as part of the best interest of the child, what the state of mental health is of the parent, what their substance abuse looks like, whether or not there's domestic violence in the home, whether or not the parent has the capacity to be able to meet the unique medical needs of the child. Those things are not written into law yet. That is part of considering the child's best interests. And that is a failure. when kids come to our home, or when I talk to my kids' friends, I always tell them it is a grown-up's job to keep kids safe. When my teenagers got into some mischief, we walked around the neighborhood and talked to other kids' parents because it is a grown-up's job to keep kids safe. And anybody who's not willing to speak out on this, even if it's just to your neighbor and spread awareness, that is part of our responsibility as adults in this country, is to say we should keep these kids safe. And then I hear stories out there about mandatory education programs to prevent sexual abuse, or about how we're teaching these programs that say, you know, speak up if you're getting hurt in your home, or speak up if something's not right in your home. But then we fail to act on the child. So we are doing exactly what happens in an abusive situation. We're saying, don't tell anybody. We're not going to act on it. No, we're going to make this be okay. And then that sets our next generation up to repeat the same cycles, the same patterns of behavior that we're trying to correct right now. That threshold of imminent physical harm is garbage. And I'm just going to call it like it is. Narcan is not a safety plan. And anybody who thinks that when you're in active addiction, you have the wherewithal to prioritize the safety and well-being of a child and to use your drugs and then put them safely away in a lockbox before they hit you, clearly has no idea about how these chemicals work on the brain, or about what addiction does to actually change the neural pathways in your brain. And I'm not faulting people for being in addiction. I'm not faulting people for having mental health barriers. I want people to get help. I do not want the children to pay their life as the cost of people getting help.
That was so eloquently said, Tracy. And you know, I have been in this now since 2021, so I feel like, you know, I've watched the trends, and the trends go up of these fatalities of children and these near fatalities. And I think near fatalities are just as scary as fatalities, because if it can happen once, it can surely happen again, because we're not removing these children. And what I
Absolutely.
have and what I've heard from these lawmakers is, well, you know, it's only one or it's only two when you write them emails or when you have conversations, and but it's not only one or it's only two. We're talking about 85 kids in 2023 fatalities in Washington state. 85 children died in Washington state because they were, you know, under the watch of DCYF. So to me, that means, like, the adults who were supposed to protect them did not. And those are the most vulnerable children we have. Now, I don't live in Washington state, but that number is so alarming to me. It makes me advocate for the children in Washington state, because something needs to be fixed there. So I think that we have a lot of, and this term was just said to me by a different family, but a lot of legislators who try to word salad us a little bit when we try to bring up these statistics to them. But we just need to get back to the facts. 85 children who, like you said, who aren't going to wake up the next day, who don't have a chance at a future. And that's 1 year alone. To me, that's unconscionable. Like, if you're a legislator, if you're not concerned about that, like, that should be illegal. Like, you should be questioned under why you want to be a legislator if you're not worried about children. So I am in absolute agreement with you. My next question for you is, what specifically do you think we need to change, you know, policy wise, systematically change, um, in Washington and then federally?
So the first thing that I'll say that we need to change in Washington is we have to get rid of that threshold of imminent physical harm to intervene on behalf of children. That's first priority. The second priority that I would say that we have is we have to give our frontline social workers a pathway to speak up without fear of retaliation, because they are the ones doing the work. In speaking with one of the representatives at our recent rally, he said that's common practice to not allow state employees to speak up while they're on the clock. And my challenge back to anybody who agrees with that is, what other profession do we have where we require employees to wait till the end of their shift or clock out for their lunch break to report a safety concern? There's not. You don't go work on an assembly line and wait until the end of your shift to say there's a problem with the machine. So that's priority number 2. Priority number 3 for me in Washington State would be to get back to some sort of permanency timeline, and to say when children have been with a family for a given period of time, whatever that looks like, right? That family needs to be considered kinship. Because we have too many kids who are lingering in the system for 5-6 years and never receiving permanency. And then they are getting pulled from the only family that they know. And I'm so sorry, because I can't imagine what the loss is like for their biological family, their biological parents. But these kids deserve a chance, and they should not be held as ransom for the choices that their parents made. They didn't make the choice. Their parents did. Federally, we have to get some oversight into the child welfare systems. As you said, you go to the DCYF Oversight Board meetings. One of the things that stood out to me early on in my research was that everybody who was on the DCYF Oversight Board was somehow connected to DCYF, that there was very little actual independent oversight. So we have to get to where we have some sort of independent investigation into what's going on in child welfare systems. A woman from Ohio recently contacted me. A child was placed with them at 3 months old and had, I think it was 30 broken bones, and has been with them a year. And nobody knows who the abuser is, and that child is on a pathway to reunification. And we can't stand for that. And our federal officials need to hear that this is happening. They need to hear what is happening across the country. And they have to intervene, because unfortunately our states aren't listening.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Ashley, do you have anything else you want to add to that?
Well, I definitely agree with Tracy about the definition of the imminent physical harm. It's insane. It's insane that they think that a child should be harmed before they can be removed. And sometimes they don't even remove them. Like in Hazel's case, they didn't remove her. She had a 2nd-degree burn to her hand that they did not take her to the doctors for. Like, they should have removed her right then and there, and they didn't. This imminent physical harm, no, they need to change the wording. And like Shayna said, the word salad thing, it's all in the words of how they write these bills. The new one that they just did, I think it was the SB 6109. So we have a fentanyl and opioid crisis here. Everywhere does, honestly, but that's kind of what they're looking at here. And instead of saying, now they're saying we give great weight. What does great weight mean?
You have to think about it a little harder.
Right? Like, give great weight to remove children that are living with parents who are using opioids? Like, it's insane. And honestly, it's not just fentanyl. We have children that have, we had one just recently actually that had gotten stabbed multiple times. The parent
40.
wasn't on fentanyl. 40? Yes, Tracy, you're right. The parent wasn't on fentanyl. They were on meth. We had one here in my county. I live in Shelton. I live in Mason County. We had one here. A little girl, just a couple months old, got a hold of meth and overdosed and died. Like, it's not, and I don't want to just point out the drugs, because it's not all just the drugs. There are systematic failures across the board. And the biggest thing for me is that until they start putting child safety as the number one priority instead of parental rights and reunification, this fight is not going to stop. These children are going to keep being removed from safe places and put into homes and die or overdose or, or be abused or neglected. There was a reason that they were removed from their home in the first place. And like I said earlier, I did family preservation services. That is like usually a 3-month program. That is not enough time. That is not enough time to work with these families and get them everything that they need. And I do understand that there are, waiting lists on treatments and all of that. But I've also seen to where parents will manipulate the system and they will push it out until there is a court date. And then they'll go to treatment. They'll be there for like a week trying to show that they have some kind of compliance. And then they'll leave in a week. And there they are back to either getting reunified with their children because they tried, or back to visitations. There is no consequences. Like, it's just nuts. There's no consequences. So I would say the imminent physical harm, definitely the definition needs to be changed. It should be like foreseeable substantial risk factors or something, not imminent physical harm. Are you going to stay somewhere where you have to pretty much be beaten before you can get removed? No. And children are our most vulnerable population, and they're not being heard. Other things, like Tracy brought up, the social workers, they have so many on their caseload. They're supposed to be able to make it to see these kids monthly. I counted out. If you don't count weekends, there's about 22 to 24 days in the month. If they have 30-something families, not even just kids, no, families on their caseload, they can't even make it to go see those kids with them one time a month. Like, it's setting the social workers up for failure, and it's setting the kids up for failure. And there's just, like, it's been over and over brought into legislators' faces that these are the risk factors. The ombudsmen who are like oversee DCYF multiple times. I did a presentation in front of legislators with nothing but data, evidence, facts, all of it. And they don't care. There are some, I will not say all, there are some that actually spoke up. And one of them that really speaks up for children is Travis Couture. And I've worked with him quite a bit. And I have a lot of respect for that guy. But there are also a lot of them that turn the blind eye. And it's like, you have numbers, you have data, you have all this evidence. You're bringing stories of children that had been failed, that they've tried to sweep under the rug, and it doesn't affect them. It doesn't affect them. They haven't experienced. And I've even asked to ask people, I've wrote emails and been like, hey, can we set up a meeting so that I can hear your story? So I can hear why you're fighting against this? The HB 1227 is the main bill that I have the most frustration with. You know, and I get nothing. I get crickets. Nothing. But I really do want to know these people's story. I want to know their background. I want to know if they've ever worked in it. I want to know if they've ever experienced something that kind of made them have their own bias, you know, because you can swing one way and you can put kids into foster homes where the same thing happens. The abuse happens, the neglect happens, all of that. But then you can swing the other way and you can reunify them with parents who are not ready to be, with parents who are not ready for that. And so, you know, like I really have tried to reach out to them and hear their story, because I really am interested in it, to hear where they're coming from and why they have the beliefs that they have. These are legislators. These are the ones that can change things. These are the ones that can change policies. These are the ones that can help these children and can give these children a voice and change, you know, the laws so that the kids are number one priority. And it's just really sad that a lot of them don't. A lot of it has to do with money. A lot of it has to do with, let's lower the number of foster care. You know, let's make them numbers go down so it looks good. No, that's not, these are kids' lives. These are families' lives. Families that have had to see their loved ones laying in a hospital bed, had to bury their loved ones at a very young age, when it shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be like that. So, yeah, and you know, the timeline, I think also with parents, the timeline is a big one. You know, if there is substance abuse, or they need to be in mental health treatment, or, you know, whatever, like they're just giving them leeway after leeway after leeway after leeway, and just pushing it out and pushing it out, giving all these extensions. No, you're just traumatizing the child even more.
Right.
And so I think another big one is a timeline. I'm actually kind of working on 2 different amendments for 2 different bills. So, and that kind of has to do with, one of them is the timeline and the imminent physical harm, and changing the verbiage of that. So, yeah, that's my stance.
Okay. Ashley, I'm glad you touched on the legislative stuff, because I was about to ask that next. So I guess I'll let Tracy answer her version of that. How do you approach this legislative stuff? I mean, there's probably a lot of doors slammed in your face. I know how that feels. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, like Ashley said, there's a lot of word salad, a lot of wordsmithing, a lot of, well, that's not what's actually happening, kind of conversations that we encounter. And what's really sad is that the data we're giving them is their data. It's the data from the legislative reports. It's the data from the ombudsman report. It is not stuff Tracy and Ashley made up. It is not stuff that we manually sat there and tallied from news agencies and came up with this ballpark figure. We're using their graphs. They had a 220% increase in critical incidents that they published on one page out of I think it was 500-page document in their last legislative report, and very little commentary on it. But there was a lot of other stuff in there. And so we choose to turn our blinders on because it's hard and it's ugly, and nobody wants to accept responsibility for it. And what I would say to them right now is, I don't care anymore who's responsible for it. We're all responsible for it if we don't fix this. Stop hiding, face the ugly facts that we are failing these kids, and fix it. Then find out what broke that and fix that also. But for us to be able to tout things like we've handed out 23,000 harm reduction kits and 750 doses of Narcan that were in those harm reduction kits have saved lives, only raise more questions. They don't make me feel better, because how many of those harm reduction kits were used and didn't save a life that we didn't track? How many of those 750 kits that were used should have counted as critical incidents and didn't? And the other thing that I find infuriating in talking with legislators is how many of you would put your child or your grandchild or your niece or your nephew in these situations and then walk away and feel good about it? What is burning out our social workers, in addition to things like caseload, is this lack of feeling like they can make a difference. I shared early on, I'm a healthcare provider. If you told me that I was going to have to face the bureaucracy of things every day, face the red tape every day, fight with insurance companies every day, and nothing I did was going to make a difference, because ultimately they were going to call the shots regardless of what I found, I wouldn't be in healthcare. They keep coming back to things like, well, you know, we shouldn't remove a child because the home doesn't have running water. Absolutely, we should help that family. We should figure out what the root cause was and help bring them up. But we cannot make the children pay the ultimate price for the mistakes their parents made in the process of that. So we want to get amendments out there. We just formed formally as an organization, like I said, and we're going to be partnering with great people like Ashley and whoever else wants to join this fight across the state and ultimately across the country to make this right. Because I can't look at my kids in the eye at night. I can't look at the kids I take care of in my job and say, you should always stand up and do what's right, if I'm not willing to stand up and do what's right. If I know this is happening and I sit on the sidelines, I am just as responsible as the next person.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I'd love to know from both of you if there are any organizations, petitions, campaigns, or initiatives that you'd like to highlight and share with our audience.
We are closing out Child Abuse Awareness Month with an event at Heritage Park in Olympia. I think we are working on getting a second spot set up in Spokane for our friends on the east side of the state. But we really want to have a vigil to honor the lives that have been lost. We really want people to remember that their faces. We want people to know their stories. We don't want them to get lost in the statistics. And so that's one of the biggest things that we're working on right now. And we'd invite everybody out there to join us, because people need to know.
Do you have anything, Ashley, to add to that?
Just maybe the organizations. I want to give a shout out to the organizations that we were able to donate to, because they are incredible organizations. That's Olive Crest here in Washington. They have actually multiple locations throughout Washington. Also, because of Hazel's donation, they started a new mental health program. So I'm really excited to hear more about that from them. Also, Life Center Northwest, they are the organ donor donation organization, and Seattle Children's Hospital. I'd like to give a shout out to them too. And then Keeping Kids Safe, Tracy's, and Light the Way, and all of you guys, Guy Tito. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. No, I'm not that great at like networking. Like I'm getting more familiar with it, but I have to like step out of my comfort zone for that. But I'm working on it.
Well, Ashley, how can people follow you and support you? And then Tracy, when Ashley's done, please tell people how they can follow you.
Right now I have a Hazel Journey Facebook. That's mainly where I put I post a lot of things. Like if I see things on Light the Way, I post a lot of stuff for Tracy. Post a lot of stuff on child abuse awareness, and just any way that I can. That's mainly where you can find me. I mean, I have a TikTok, but I'm not on there very often. You can get a hold of Shayna for sure on Light the Way. She will definitely connect with me and let me know. But yeah, I need to kind of get better at the marketing thing.
And I see that it's in the comments. So if anybody is looking to quick, just copy and paste the link that Ryle will put in the comments. That's Hazel Journey for Facebook. And Tracy, where can we find you?
Same thing. I'm learning all this social media and networking stuff. It's new to me. Kids laugh at me a lot. I don't have a TikTok. I think I have an Instagram account that was created once upon a time, but I don't know how it works. So the best way is to follow us on Facebook at Keeping Kids Safe. And you can find our contact info there. You can send us a message. And just really hope to have you guys help us spread awareness. And we're so thankful to all of you, Shayna and Nicole, for your support, for your encouragement. Shayna, I feel like it was just last week that you and I chatted on the phone for the first time, and you were telling me I could do this. So thank you again.
I'm so proud of both of you. Like, you're both doing such amazing things. And like I said before, I feel honored to know you and to be in your circle and to be able to support what you're doing. So thank you both for sharing your stories and telling us all how we can support you and help you and lift up these organizations. I can't tell you how close this is to my heart and how important this is. I just want to add a quick side note when Tracy was talking about how legislators start saying, but we have this many Narcan kits and blah, 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 blah. So when Oakley, it came out that Oakley was missing and DCYF had failed her, we started writing to the DCYF Oversight Board Committee, some of the legislative committees, and there was a legislator whose name is Tana Sen, who happened to be both on this committee and on the Oversight Board. And she also was interviewed because she was on both of these two committees. And so we had emailed her asking her to ask for this independent investigation that we're asking for. And it was an email to both Jamie Joe, who is Oakley's foster mom, and to me. And she said, so sorry for your loss, but really, basically, we can't do anything, but we gave Grays Harbor, $20,000 to put towards substance abuse. And too bad, so sad, Oakley's worth $20,000. Tana Sen is now the director of the Department of Children, Youth, and Family in Washington. So that is who is now in charge of this agency. Someone who valued putting, $20,000 towards substance abuse treatment over finding out what really was the failure of Oakley and this department. So I think that for me is just kind of what sums up what's going on sometimes at DCYF and the people who run it and the legislators who are making some of these choices. And it's not all the legislators. It's only some of them, but unfortunately we can't seem to all agree on the same thing. So that's kind of my little side note about DCYF. If anybody has any questions for Tracy or Ashley, if you could just put them in the comments. They did such an incredible job of telling their stories. But if you have any questions, let us know. Yeah. Yeah, go for it.
How can people who see this webinar that want to do something, they don't know what to do, what is something tangible that they can do to help this situation, especially in Washington where you are, or even anywhere?
I'd say ask for a meeting with your local representatives, ask for a meeting with your legislator, write them a letter, make sure they know that it's not just keeping kids safe, it's not just Hazel, that this is a real problem in Washington, and that it runs much deeper than any of us realize yet. And if you don't feel comfortable doing that, we've got some instructions on our website, on our Facebook page about how to contact your legislators. Reach out to me. I'm happy to help you figure out who they are. We've even got some email templates that you can use.
Yeah, that's
Also,
great. And I feel like,
sorry.
no, I'm sorry. I just want to say, I feel like sometimes people feel more comfortable writing emails. Just email blast them daily if you have to. So keep them coming. But go ahead, Ashley.
I was going to say also just bring awareness, share stuff, you know, if you got a story, share your story. If you see something, say something. And if you see things being posted, repost them, bring awareness, put it out there in their faces.
Let's make it loud.
Wow. I mean, thank you so much, ladies. I know how hard this is, Ashley, and really appreciate you sharing, because sharing these stories, unfortunately, as hard as it is to share them, it does save lives. So you're leaving a legacy. Hazel's leaving a legacy for you to fight for and saving other kids. It was really hard to listen to, but we really need to know the reality, and that's going to be what changes things. So, wow, Jana, this was pretty incredible. And Tracy and Ashley, you've been amazing. Such great information. People don't know what they don't know, so sharing this is really important. I'm not seeing any questions from the chat, unless I missed any. And Raul, if I missed any, please let me know. Put it in the chat. But Haley or Shayna, do either of you have any questions that maybe would be good for the audience to hear the answer to?
I put my questions in the outline, so I am good. I just want to thank Tracy and Ashley again for for coming forward and talking about this. Like Nicole said, it's not easy, I am sure, but you are saving lives by bringing awareness, and we just thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you guys for having us.
Yeah, thank you guys for having us. It was very nice to meet you all. Thank you for, bringing us on your platform. My heart goes out to you, Nikki, and it probably was kind of hard and a little triggering to hear Hazel's, but just know my heart is with you. Haley, you've been incredible. You listened to me rant. You you gave us the outline, so that I wasn't kind of all over the place. I appreciate you for that. Raul, thank you so much for being in the chat, and putting those websites out there and everything. And Shayna,
Don't make me cry.
You are just incredible. Ever since I met you, you have just helped bring light in some really dark situations and given me opportunity after opportunity to connect with others and to bring awareness to child abuse and to share Hazel's story. And I just thank you all for letting me come on here. This is the first time I've ever shared Hazel's whole story. And I was so nervous to do it. So nervous to do it because it had been something that I had been keeping to myself for so long. But I really feel so free. And thank you guys. And Tracy, I will see you on the 27th at the vigil. And you're incredible. And thank you so much for sharing your story. And just, I can't thank you all enough.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank
You're
you
so,
guys.
so welcome. Thank you both. Yeah. And make sure if you guys go live, again, I will make sure to post it on our socials so that people can watch the vigil from afar, which is what we did last time when you guys had the vigil in February. So we will be happy to do that so that people can kind of join in from far away. I love watching a vigil online and getting ramped up from the seat of my couch and feel like you're still included when you can't be there. But
Yeah.
I'm really proud of you both. I'm very, very proud of you both. And I do believe that people come into our lives for certain reasons. And I feel like both of you are crossing my path because we're all meant to do things to change what's supposed to happen in Washington. So thank you for coming on and sharing your story with all of us. And Nikki and Haley and Raul, thank you for being the best team. I couldn't do this without you too. So thanks everyone for a great evening. And thanks for everybody who joined us. We appreciate you guys joining us. It's been great to do the monthly webinars, and hopefully we'll see you next month.
Thank you all. Have a